build-up was complete, and the stage was set for what was dubbed the match of the century. Fans had been waiting for this match between Hollywood Hogan and Sting for well over a year. Sting had been surprising the NWO with his many different sneak attacks, whether it be from the rafters, in disguise, or popping up from underneath the ring. Sting was a one-man army, and he had only one goal in mind. His sole mission was to destroy Hollywood Hogan and the NWO.
I think that the build-up was enormous. Obviously, it was. I mean, it changed WCW, changed the entire company, I believe. There were so many good things that happened along the way, and the build-up was, I mean, as good as it can possibly get. And, you know, you at the end of that, you have to deliver something that is awesome, something that will match what the build-up was. And I don't think Hulk or Eric or anyone else would disagree. It just did not accomplish that, in my opinion. And that's what my opinion is to this day.
So Sting had his doubts about whether or not the match delivered. So what went wrong? WCW was the hottest thing going at that time in professional wrestling, largely due to the NWO and the amazing build-up that this match had. Well, simply put, I don't think it mattered what happened in the ring that night. There was never going to be any match that could have lived up to the hype and build-up that went into this one. And largely speaking, it is quite rare that the in-ring match will actually be equal to an intense, exciting build-up, especially one such as this. But was the match really all that bad? Let's take a look. Both competitors' entrances were awesome, but especially Sting's. He had thunder and lightning with a chilling voiceover talking over his theme song. The two men stood face to face in the ring and Sting was ready, and so was Hogan. Both men locked up in a power struggle for brand supremacy. Hogan delivered crushing right-hand blows to the Stinger, calling him a hero, then slammed Sting into the turnbuckle with a punishing clothesline. But Sting wouldn't stay down, and when Hogan's elbows missed an evading Sting, the Dark Warrior got up and hit Hogan with a patented Stinger dropkick, which sent Hogan flying out of the ring. Both men battled back and forth inside and out of the ring in a match that lasted around 13 minutes until we got to that now famous ending. Hogan threw Sting into the ropes, hit him with his big boot and leg drop, and then Nick Patrick counted to 3. And that is where the drama all began.
His knee was real bad, and my personal life was all messed up, so you know, I'm taking some of the credit too for, you know, the way things went, but also there was a mess up with the count and the referee, and
right.
It was like, what was that all? How could that have failed? Where was the mistake there? You know. So and then it makes everybody second guess. You know, like, oh, you know, did the referee get paid off or what? You know.
Right.
I mean, I don't believe that happened, but at least I don't want to believe it. But at the time, you know, when you're going through it, your mind just starts going everywhere, and you're thinking, what is going on here, man? I mean, why can't this just be like it was, easy and fun?
But the events that took place that day were anything but easy and fun. Yes, the outcome that Sting would win the match had already been decided months earlier, but how they were going to get to that finish had not, and that is where the big problem was. The man in charge of WCW, Eric Bischoff, stated in a 2019 interview, the finish was already set in stone. Everyone knew Sting was going over, but it was just a matter of how they would get to that point. Sting arrived to the building. He was going through a lot of personal stuff. He hadn't bothered to get in shape or get a tan. Bischoff said that he wanted Sting and Hogan to decide how Sting would be going over, as he didn't want to get involved in that. He said that would be better off left to guys like Steve and Hulk to decide. Bischoff continued saying, the vibe he got from Sting that day was, okay, you guys are going to screw me out of an opportunity somehow here, so let's just get this over with. Bischoff also stated they went through 5 or 6 different options for a finish, maybe more.
You know, it was, Hulk was struggling with, you know, how he wanted to do it and how he wanted to put me over and all that, and he just sort of, you know, it was like there was a lot of closed doors meetings with him and Eric all the way up until just, you know, not too long before we actually walked into the ring. And I kept saying, what's the big deal, man? I mean, I kept talking to Eric, saying, does he not want to put me over? Does he not want to do it? Or, I mean, does he want to win? I mean, just tell me. I mean, just so I know,
Right.
Just so I know.
Right.
And Eric was trying to be reassuring, and but what he was is he'd go to Hulk, and then he'd come back to me, and then he'd go to Hulk, and he'd come back to me. And I'm like,
he was the middleman almost. Yeah.
Yeah, can't we just talk about this all together and just do business? Whatever the business is going to be, let's just come up with an answer and do it.
So, what happened? Bischoff, in his own words, had left it up to the talent to decide. In other words, he left it up to Sting and Hogan to come up with the finish. And that, in my opinion, is never really a good idea, because naturally each competitor will just look out for themselves, right, in a situation like that. You need the boss of the company saying, this is what's going to happen, do it this way, end of story. In other words, what Vince McMahon does. But I'm digressing. So what happened? Well, Hogan pinned Sting and thought he had won the title. But hold on, enter Bret the Hitman Hart, who had only just recently joined WCW after the now infamous Montreal Screwjob. And why was Bret Hart there? Well, you see, Nick Patrick was supposed to make a fast 3 count there, giving Hollywood Hogan the dubious win. So Bret Hart came out and said to referee Nick Patrick words to the effect of, "This isn't going to happen again, I'm sick of guys being screwed over by referees." But the problem was, there was no fast 3 count. Nick Patrick had just counted to 3 normally. So in actuality, it looked like Hogan had just gotten a totally clean win over Sting. And as we all know, the match was of course restarted and Sting got the win and the title in the end. But why would you restart a match with a normal 3 count? Talk about a total balls up, right? The count was supposed to be fast. And that was why Bret Hart would come out and the match would be restarted, right? So theories exist to this day on what exactly did happen that night. Did Hulk Hogan pay off Nick Patrick to make a normal count, so it made it look like Hogan had actually won fair and square? It made Hogan look good? Or had Patrick just simply forgotten to do the fast count at that stage? It just slipped his mind. Well, in an exclusive 2017 interview, referee Nick Patrick broke his 20-year silence, opening up for the very first time about what really happened that night. And hold on to your seats here, guys, because this is where things start to get a little more confusing. What happened was 2 people, Sting and Hulk, they were the 2 franchise guys, and the 2 franchise guys were butting heads at that point in time. One guy came up to me and told me to fast count it to get some heat and give him an out, and the other guy said, don't fast count it, keep it nice and slow. And so the person that was in charge, he's referring to Eric Bischoff here, evidently didn't want to make a call, didn't want to pick a side, and made themselves scarce all night long to where I couldn't find them to ask them, hey, what do you want me to do? So in that last piece there, Nick Patrick is saying that basically Eric Bischoff hid from him all night, made himself scarce all night long, so Nick Patrick couldn't come up and ask him about it. In other words, Eric Bischoff was avoiding the whole situation and didn't want to talk to anybody about it, least of all Nick Patrick. And if that's true, well, Mr. Bischoff, you come up short there and you're not doing your job, pal, if that's true. But the big thing coming out of all that, Patrick said that one guy came up to him and told him to fast count it to get some heat and to give him an out. And he said the other guy said, don't fast count it, keep it nice and slow. So obviously Sting wouldn't have said, don't fast count it, keep it nice and slow, because ultimately that would make Sting look weak with Hogan getting a normal pinfall over him. So Sting wouldn't have said, keep the count slow. So you would assume that it was Sting that said, fast count it, it's going to get some heat, and it gives him an out, it gives Sting an out. So in other words, it looks like Hogan didn't beat him cleanly and it was just a total botch by the ref. The ref was cheating. And of course, referee Nick Patrick was a former NWO member anyway. So it just looked like Nick Patrick was helping out his old NWO buddy, Hollywood Hogan, right? So according to Nick Patrick here, you would assume that it was Hollywood Hogan that came up to him and said, don't fast count it, keep it nice and slow. But why would you do that? Why would you make it a slow count? Restarting the match after a nice slow count just doesn't make sense. Although if Hogan wanted to make Sting look bad and make himself look good that he had just won the match clean, then yes, he would have said to Nick Patrick, make the count nice and slow. Which, guys, is a totally stupid thing to say. Whoever said make the count look nice and slow, if it was Hogan, totally defeats the purpose of the fast count and Bret Hart coming out to restart the match. And Nick Patrick continued here. He went on to say that he generally went with a slow count and just added a little more drama to split it down the middle, given all the confusion that was going on backstage. In other words, Nick Patrick didn't know what to do, so he ended up doing a slow count, trying to add more drama to it. I don't know where that drama was exactly. It seemed just like a pretty normal count to me. But that's what Patrick did. He was given the two options, a fast count and a slow count by each competitor, by Sting and Hollywood Hogan, and he went with the slow count, which is really stupid considering the match was going to restart because of a fast count. That's why Bret Hart came out in the first place. Confusing? So in the end, here's my sum up of the whole situation. Eric Bischoff left it up to the talent to decide what the finish was going to be. That is a weak move in my opinion. That is something that Vince McMahon would never do. You got to be firm, you got to be a boss. That needed a strong, decisive decision there. And when you just leave it up to the guys who are going to be fighting the match in the ring, even though it was Sting and Hollywood Hogan, two seasoned professionals, you're just not going to get a good outcome, and it was proven here. As I mentioned before, you need a boss to come in and say, this is how it's going to happen, do it this way, end of story. And it would have worked. And it was such a big, important moment, a huge match. This should have been handled far more professionally. And in the end, you can't blame Nick Patrick. He didn't know what to do. He couldn't find Eric Bischoff. He said Eric Bischoff was basically hiding from him all night. He was told one thing by Sting, one thing by Hogan. So what was Patrick to do? He tried to split it down the middle, as he said. So it's not really his fault. And Eric Bischoff has said that Sting turned up that day. He just didn't seem interested and he just wasn't his usual self. Hadn't bothered to get in shape. And he thought that Hogan and Bischoff would just end up screwing him out of the whole situation. And, well, in the end, maybe he was right. And just as a side note, how Eric Bischoff said Sting turned up without a tan. Well, I actually think that kind of suited the character, right? Because Sting had been up in the rafters, hadn't been speaking to anyone, had just been doing his own thing, so he wouldn't exactly be a golden bronze tan, right? He kind of would be a white, pale colour, wouldn't you think? Because he'd been spending all his time up in the rafters, right? I thought that kind of fit the character well. Maybe later on with the Sting character, he'd be all bronzed and tanned up in the months to follow. So I was never really bothered by the whole Sting not having a tan thing. It actually kind of fit his character well for that time, I thought. But as far as the match went, after the Hogan 3 count that never happened or whatever, the match was ultimately restarted and Sting defeated Hollywood Hogan, nailing Hogan with some massive stinger splashes in the corner, and ultimately making Hogan tap out in the Scorpion Deathlock with special referee Bret the Hitman Hart there to make the call. So that's how it all went down at WCW Starrcade 1997, guys. Are you confused as I am? So here's a final word from Sting, the man himself, talking about that 3 count and just what did happen at the end of that match. Thanks for tuning into the video, and we'll catch you next time, guys.
To be honest, I don't know for sure what happened on that thing. I really don't know. He is one of the best chess players of all time. But it's just one of those things that happened, really. And I have just let it all go. And it's amazing because this question will never die. And my answer is always the same. I honestly don't know for sure what happened that night, but it doesn't matter because I don't think it really hurt anything for me.
Thanks heaps guys for tuning into the video. Be sure to drop a scorpion death drop on that like button and subscribe to the channel for more awesome pro wrestling action from the WWE, the WCW and much more.